Health and Human Services Committee. Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. We are being broadcasted on HPA-TV, Channel 96 on Comcast and Frontier. And I know for future broadcasting, we will be shown on HPA-TV social media broadcasting as well as their YouTube page. So this agenda meeting is this meeting is attended by Councilman John Gale, who is a member, Miss Amy Chambers from Development Services. Hello, Amy. Mr. DeMar Osborne from Corporation Counsel. So thank you all for attending. So we're anticipating other members as well. It looks like Councilman James Sanchez has joined us as well. Hello, Councilman Sanchez. Looks like he's logging in now. So with that being said, we're called to order, and we're going to, this is a follow-up from our other Health and Human Services meeting. And this ordinance is amending Chapter 27, Itinerant Vendors, Street Vendors, and Food Trucks of the Hartford Municipal Code. Agenda item number 26 on March 22nd. City Council meeting. So with that being said, I believe Ms. Chambers, you're here to talk on this, correct? All right, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you for having me back tonight. I am here to speak about some of the modifications that we have proposed to make to the ordinance. I'm going to just go through the list of changes that are in the ordinance that have changed rather since the last meeting that we had. And I can take any questions from there. I also have a revised map, and I was unable to share that information prior to this meeting. My apologies, but I can share that and we can discuss that as well if you'd like. So just going through the revisions to the ordinance itself, I took the opportunity to try to clean up a few things for clarity's sake as well. So we've added a definition to the beginning of the ordinance to specifically define ice cream truck. We have also added language clarifying that we're referring to a separate business license, separate from the Health and Human Services food license, which is what is issued to every vendor now. And the reason that I'm adding that clarification here is because presently Development Services issues licenses only to vendors who are planning on operating in the downtown. But one of the biggest changes here is that we're suggesting that all food truck operators or vendors would have this license so that we can better track the food trucks citywide. And I'm using food truck as a catch-all term. We've also added language. So there was language in the ordinance about cleaning up the site after vendors vacate, but I added specifically after they leave or upon preparing to leave the area for the day, so that there's just a little bit of clarification, because both in this last meeting and in the public hearing, we did hear feedback about cleaning. So I just wanted to strengthen that a little bit further. I did add some language about nuisance products, so silly string and things, and that was really just some leftover language from the research that we'd previously done that was not in the ordinance to begin with. So that's a prohibition on sales of things like silly string. I have added language about the license renewal date being June 30th. That aligns with Health and Human Services requirement for renewals for their food service permits, as well as other business licensing renewals that take place in the city. So that will just provide a bit more clarification as to the actual operations of this once we roll it out. I changed the language. I mentioned when talking about Health and Human Services and their permitting, I was using mobile vendor food handler. I received clarification from Health and Human Services that food handler is actually a separate license and does not apply here. So I changed the language to food service license. So wherever I'm referencing Health and Human Services, I'm talking about the food service license instead. And the biggest change is that I've added 2 additional sections at the end. One, on the basis of some of the conversation we had here in the last meeting, Councilman LeBron asked a question about ice cream trucks. And at the time, I did not have an answer for you about how we might handle ice cream trucks, because the way that the language was written was pretty restrictive. So I've added a section about ice cream trucks, and the section begins by indicating that the ice cream trucks, for all intents and purposes and by the definitions that are included in the ordinance, would be considered food trucks, and all of the food truck section would apply to ice cream trucks, except for what's specified in this section that differs. So I'm suggesting here that ice cream trucks would not have to follow the permitted locations map, that they would be instead limited to making sales on streets with posted 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, so on slower streets. That sales would not be made within 50 feet of an intersection, which is farther than what was proposed for food trucks. We had 20 feet of an intersection, and the logic here is that we have children who are approaching the ice cream trucks, and so for safety purposes, we're a bit further back from an intersection. We've also added a prohibition language that the ice cream truck should not stop to vend within 150 feet of another ice cream truck that stopped to vend. We've added in reference to the legislation that was just passed this week with regard to ice cream trucks at the state level, requirements for ice cream trucks to have warning flashers and to comply with additional safety requirements of the state, and that they shall not back up or reverse to make a sale. Suggesting here that the ice cream trucks would have limited hours of operation, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 1/2 hour after sunset. And adding as well noise restrictions with regard to the ice cream trucks. So I'm suggesting here that they'll not play any sound or amplified sound or loudspeaker when they're stationary, stopped, or parked. And I should note that the food truck section prohibits food trucks from playing any amplified sound at all. In this case, the ice cream truck would be prohibited from doing so when it is stopped or parked. That they would not play music after 7 p.m. or 1/2 hour after sunset. So if they're not operational, they wouldn't play music, and that they wouldn't make any other sound that would qualify as a disturbance of the peace. Councilman LeBron, I do want to acknowledge that you made the request about the ice cream truck song, and I was unable to communicate with Corporation Council. I did a little bit of research about other municipalities nationwide, and found some case law that existed about concerns about First Amendment rights and with regard to the specific song itself. So I didn't put anything in with regard to the song itself, although I did want to make the suggestion, at least for discussion, that as opposed to what's written here, and I realize this is probably controversial, but as opposed to what's written here, we could prohibit sound at all in the same way that food trucks are prohibited from amplified sound. And I just wanted to address that because you did raise it in the last meeting. So I think that could be at least a point of discussion. So that's the food truck section. There's also a section, and this is the final section that has changed. This is a new section with regard to vending push carts, and they're defined up at the top. I believe that they would cover the hot dog carts that we discussed in the last meeting. once again, suggesting that all of the terms of the food truck section apply, except for the changes specified in this section. Here, I'm proposing that the hours of operation for push carts be 7 a.m. until midnight. I would also note that suggesting with regard to the operations that the push carts are limited to commercial connector streets, avenues, and boulevards. So these are busier streets in the city. And they're primarily commercial streets or zone commercial. That the carts should operate on the sidewalk or in the tree belt, and if no sidewalk exists for some reason, that they'll be in the street but not to interfere with vehicular traffic, so on the side of the road. I have listed a limitation on the size of the cart in order to further define it for what can be on the sidewalk. And that they should not obstruct the sidewalk and must leave at least 4 feet for pedestrians to pass. And if that's not possible, that they cannot vend in that location. I have added specifically here that they need to have a waste container attached to the cart. And that the push carts shall not make any sales, stop to make any sales or attempt to make sales in intersections. So if they're crossing the street, that they'll not be able to conduct business in front of the entrance to any building or driveway, which is also in the food truck section, but I thought it important to add here, so it's a bit duplicative, I admit, and that they may not block any mailbox, traffic signal, fire hydrant, crosswalk, handicap ramp, bus stop, or loading zone. And then finally, provide specifications that the vending carts may have umbrellas attached to them, umbrellas or canopies, that there's a limit on the height of those umbrellas or canopies and that they have to be affixed to the cart. And then finally, that those push carts are restricted to vend out within a 50-foot buffer of any rec center or school, which is a smaller buffer than the food trucks. So those are the total list of changes to the ordinance as written. And I'm sorry, Councilman, the only other thing I would add is that I did send this in a note earlier today. We've made these modifications. Corporation Council did take a look at them, but we've not had the opportunity to vet them with the mayor's office. So I'm trying to obtain as much feedback as I can here today, with the caveat that we still need to have that conversation.
Ms. Chambers, thank you so much. I mean, it's such a short timeline. I mean, really great job, and respectful of the fact that more communication is needed. So with that being said, I want to acknowledge committee member Councilwoman Rossetti, and I think I did introduce Councilman Sanchez earlier today, but he wasn't visual. Good to see you back, Councilman Sanchez. So with that being, no problems, no problem. So with that being said, I open the floor up. If there's any questions, do any of my colleagues have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Councilman Sanchez.
Yeah, for you, Chair. Hello, Amy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
So I was hearing at the end about the food cart. So is my understanding, let's say there's a panel or the sidewalk is approximately, let's say, 5 feet wide. They are not to block the access to the sidewalk, but they can park or they can place their food, the cart on the snow belt. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
So if the snow belt is narrow and the sidewalk is also narrow, they're not allowed to place that cart there.
That's correct. We need to maintain 4 feet of space for pedestrian for ADA access as well. And so the suggestion is that while they can vend on the sidewalk, they cannot vend in locations where they would not be able to maintain that clearance for pedestrians.
Okay, and then now if there is no clearance, I mean, are they able to also station their cart on the street?
That's not the preferred alternative. So essentially they're to be on the sidewalk if a sidewalk is available, and if there's no sidewalk available, so no other alternative, no other location that they could go along that road, then they could be in the street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then now, as far as the food handling and the food truck, can you just share with us what's the difference with those two types of license?
So one of them refers to the license that an individual would get for basically for being able to. It's a license that you get prior to getting the food service license from Health and Human Services. So that name, the food handler, actually refers to that you get prior. When you go to Health and Human Services, it's the food service license that they're obtaining from the department. So just making sure that we're using the correct terminology.
Okay, and then it's with that they can file for license and certification for the food truck.
Correct.
Which is a separate.
Correct, right. So the bulk of the language in here is to make the distinction between the food service license that they get from Health and Human Services and effectively a business license from licensing and inspections.
All right, and then my last one, I don't want to take up all the time. So when a food handler gets licensed for the food truck, and upon getting that license, are they allowed to park anywhere in the city within the map zoning, or do they have to be specific where they're going to park the food truck in that zone? Right? Let's say in front of 299 Franklin Avenue. That would be their specific location. Okay, they just move from one area to another at any time.
So what's proposed is that outside of the downtown area, they could locate in any one of those locations without specifying, to the department that they're going to be there. In downtown, because there are fewer areas and conceivably more demand, the request is that they specify that they want to be there so that we can manage and create, kind of a more equitable schedule of the trucks locating in downtown.
And that's including the, if they have a PO box plus a residential address, right? That's just to make sure if we have to reach out to them, we know where, how to get to them.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to them physically locating in different areas around the city. Is that what you're?
Yes, I was referring to that too, but I'm just saying is, let's say there's an issue with a food truck. Mm-hmm. In this new ordinance, there's, I think, a line item where it states that besides, or, that I requested, besides having a PO box address, we need to have a physical address in order to reach or contact them.
Got it. So in the application, we have been requesting that information. It's not written in the ordinance that we have a physical address, but in the application that is set up online, we request a physical address.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Amy. I just want to go over a few things, make sure I'm understanding this ordinance. I'm looking at section 27-121 licensing, and then also looking at section 27-30. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as though every food vendor, you could have, this also regulates vendors of balloons and vendors of non-food items. But if we're talking about food vendors, it sounds like they need 3 licenses. They will have to get a food service license from Health and Human Services. They will have to get a mobile vendor license from DDS or its assigns. and they'll have to get an itinerant vendor license from DDS or its assigns. Am I correct?
No, they would get two licenses, the food service license from Health and Human Services and the mobile vendor license from Development Services.
Well, I think then you need to go back and take a look at the interplay between section 2730 and section 27121 so that that's clarified, because it looks, the way it reads, it looks as though all itinerant vendors need a license. It's $250 a year, and it defines food trucks as itinerant vendors. So if we're not going to hit them up for 3 licenses, let's make it clear. The second, excuse me, just a second here. Again, just clarifying on the vending push carts. You've now set it up so that they are not restricted to the areas that are shown on the map for food trucks themselves.
Yes, and Councilman Gale, if I could just respond to your last comment, in the definitions, I have under, it may be that I need to change out a word in one of those sections, but in the definitions, I have under itinerant vendor excluding food, beverages, or ice cream, and then separately define food trucks. So I would think that that covers that the food truck operators are not subject to the requirement for the itinerant vendor section 27.1 or 2730.
Okay, well, it is confusing because itinerant vendors also include street vendors. And then
right, and we don't use the street vendor language in the food truck section either.
well, I would encourage you to just do something with the definitions, because when I read it, to me, it seemed as though a food truck was an itinerant vendor. And if they're not, fine that they're not, I just,
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, your other question?
yeah. The hours of operation for push carts, and Mr. Chair, there's a couple of things I think we as a committee want to talk about. I just want to get clarification from Ms. Chambers on these. The hours of operation said it shall be limited to the hours of 7 a.m. and 12 a.m. And I always get confused between what's 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. Is 12 a.m. midnight?
12 a.m. is midnight.
Yeah, I would prefer you say midnight. If that's what, and I think you want to say limited to between the hours of 7 a.m. and midnight. But anyway, so do I not need to worry about street vendors then? Those are not food trucks. That's a different street vendors. That's a different category. The parts of this that are regulating street vendors are not applicable.
Not related to food.
Okay. Just for and this is very technical, in section 2730, everywhere else you refer to Department of Development Services or its assigns. But in section C of 2730, you say licenses and inspections.
Yep, I can change
You could
that.
make it consistent, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had one other comment here.
That is one of the changes that we've tried to make throughout, because the language in the section now is pretty antiquated and it refers to the Bureau of Inspections. So I imagine that the city was set up differently when this language was written. So,
And how do we have any regulation on the food cart, food truck use of generators?
yes, let me see what section that is. So 27-134 power source, all power sources, including but not limited to tanks or generators used in connection with the vending operation shall either be placed inside or affixed to the vehicle or cart. No cords, hoses, or other appurtenances shall create trip hazards, block, or impede the free flow of traffic in the public right-of-way. Power sources shall be maintained in good working order and shall be shielded in a manner to effectively reduce noise levels.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Rossetti, you have any questions? I had my head down, that's why I didn't know if you were raising your hand.
A couple of the ones that I did, Councilman Gale and Councilman Sanchez asked, so I believe I am good. Thank you very much. I did have some confusion with the definition of the different cart versus truck versus, but thank you very much, Amy.
No problem. So I have a couple questions. So, Mrs. Chambers, on the noise level, when we talk about the noise level, is there like a noise meter that they go out with, or is it subjective? Like, how do we address the noise level?
I believe that the the noise ordinance refers to noise in decibels. I don't know if, if the police department goes out with anything that measures that. I do know, certainly if it's after hours or something like that, that it would be addressed, but I don't know any further than that.
The second question I have is that, and I'm not sure if this is addressed in this ordinance, but I'm pretty sure that it does happen with food trucks in terms of spots. So what I'm thinking is, or foreshadowing in the future, is that when we, for example, hypothetically, if we were to approve these restricted zones or these zones where food trucks can operate, that there would be an initial scurry to try to get optimum locations per se, at least in the perceptions of the food trucks vendors. So number one, can folks pay extra for certain spots? And how do we monitor the assumption that people have designated spots? I don't know if that made much sense. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that there are food trucks who believe that certain spots are theirs and they sell them, right, as their own. And so they believe that they're theirs. They've been there for X amount of years. We're changing them. We're moving them from a certain location, bring it to another. How we plan to regulate that? Or is it a kind of like first come, first serve?
Well, the locations where the city's been involved in specific spots over the course of time are locations in downtown. Presently, there is language in the current ordinance about designated vendor spaces, and every year still on June 30th, on that same cycle, people come in and they obtain those spaces. So presently they do pay for a specific space. Because they're going to have to come in, again at that June 30th mark to renew, there is this, new process in place. So at least it provides an opportunity to make sure that the vendors are aware of that information. We're doing away with the concept of vendors having to pay for the spots. So we're basically making designated areas on the road that'll, we've proposed to put up signage to indicate these are, food truck vendor areas, and that we would essentially manage, knowing how many spaces we have for trucks in those areas, manage how many trucks occupy those spaces without having them pay for the space or anything like that. And having that basically be something that is not transferable, it's attached to their license for the course of the year. So if someone goes out, we know this is the space that you're supposed to be operating in. And again, that this is limited to those zones in the downtown area on the map. It does not apply to the areas outside of downtown in those other areas. So long as it's a designated area on the map, the food truck operators could locate there.
So basically with the spots, if I'm hearing you correctly, the spots that you can pay for in the designated areas that you can't pay for them, which is in downtown, right? What I'm hearing is that those can't be sold either, right? To another food vendor, right? That shouldn't be happening, correct?
I don't believe that should be happening now. But I do know that the vendors are paying for those spaces now. And under the proposed ordinance, they would not be paying additionally for those spaces. And instead, all of the food trucks basically are paying for this business license. So we can now track all of the food trucks out of the Department of Development Services and know which ones are located or meant to locate in those designated zones in downtown. But because they're no longer paying for a space, they would, if they were to continue to, if you're suggesting that a food truck, operator is, trying to sell their space, that is off the table because no one's paying for space.
Right. And I'm not suggesting, I'm saying it. So I just want to be clear that is happening, because what would happen is, let's say Nick's hot dog cart. I used to have a hot dog cart. It was called Hot Diggities, right? So Hot Diggities would have a hot dog cart downtown, in front of said bar, and then Jimmy's Johnsonville Brats, Councilman Sanchez's Johnsonville Brats. So I'm going for a 2-week vacation. I would sell that for 2 weeks to Councilman Sanchez's Johnsonville Brats. And that has been happening for quite some time in the industry. So right now, in this ordinance, we kind of lock that up where that's not allowed to happen, right?
Correct.
And I'm saying that publicly because there's people watching who are very interested in this, obviously because of the importance of it with food trucks. But I just want to kind of double click on that so that people understand that spots can and cannot be sold. So with that being said, assuming that we land on something, we all agree, the committee here, council agrees, your office agrees, we all land on something. And how will that, the marketing or the regulations be, what's the outreach plan to get that out to these food truck vendors and, street vendors and itinerant vendors?
So we do have people who have been coming into Health and Human Services in anticipation of the renewal of their license. And so I think that one of the things that's probably going to be something that my team works on after this is creating some simplified version of what's written here. Something that's a little bit easier to read and gives like the quick and dirty. So that people can, we can make that available in development services at the counter, probably in Health and Human Services as well, so that people can kind of take that with them. I have, had conversations both with iCharles and with members of Health and Human Services about, planning on sitting down with the staff, obviously, to run through what these changes are and make sure that we're kind of in lockstep as we begin to roll them out. And so I think, making sure that the staff really have a good understanding of what those changes are will make a really big difference, when they're communicating as well with vendors. I think, beyond that, we do have a list of the vendors who were the specific vendors who are registered, for the course of this year, this fiscal year that's coming to, or rather this permit year that's coming to a close. And we can definitely make some phone calls to them, although I'm sure they'll hear about it if they're intending on renewing. I haven't been able to have a really good conversation. I reached out to the CT food trucks in advance of the public meeting. I did not get to speak to anyone. I sent them the information via email. But I would think if we can reach somebody there, that may be a good tool as well to just disseminate information further.
What I would recommend is also to have it in multiple languages, English and Spanish and Portuguese, I believe, and whatever, in terms of the food truck, if they're filling out some kind of information, if they have a, language that they need that translated for, I would recommend that. Can I just, while I'm speaking here, is it, Councilwoman Rossetti, is it okay? Can you forward the link to Councilwoman Surgeon for me?
Yep.
Thank you very much. So I want to just keep the meeting moving. Thank you so much. So in terms of time, what is, well, let me just be direct. Ms. Chambers, what are you looking for in terms of time from this committee, or when do we need to have this wrapped up by in terms of a timeline?
I think that I know that you asked this question in the last meeting, and I think the answer kind of remains that time is of the essence. So I think if there are, whether they're concrete bits of feedback that I can, take in this meeting, or, other things that can come, I don't know, outside of the meeting or some other way, definitely wanting to incorporate those things as soon as possible. I know this is a special meeting. When is your next regularly scheduled meeting?
So it's on May 5th, but the reason why we scheduled this meeting is I believe, the desire of wanting it sooner rather than later. And on May 5th, that regular meeting, we're going through budget, and it's really the council's busy time of the year, that through June, where we have a lot on our shoulders. My second year, and I realize that now. And so that's why we scheduled this meeting. We can always revisit and look at another meeting, but you keep, I've heard you say, you threw out the date June 30th as part of the new cycle year. And I would imagine that ideally that would be the last, we definitely want that done before that, right?
We would want it done pretty as far in advance before that as possible, because again, we want to make sure that anyone coming to renew is able to renew understanding all of the requirements that would be placed on them.
I want to acknowledge my colleague, Councilwoman Surgeon, who has just joined us. And Councilwoman Surgeon, I publicly want to apologize. I had my phone slipped over and didn't realize you didn't have the link. So I apologize for that.
I'm good.
Okay. So Councilman Sanchez, I believe you have a question?
Yes, more rather of a statement. I would like to see this passed as soon as possible in preparation for the summer. As we all know, there's been a major issues surrounding the food trucks, and I'm not sure why, it was attracting or creating issues that in certain neighborhoods it got to a point where even the HPD could not handle this ordinance. I support this ordinance. I think it's great. I think they've done a great job, Amy, you and your staff. And with these little tweaks, I'm wondering if it's possible, and if we can, again, I support it. I would like to move it forward for next council's meeting with the improvements on there, if that can be submitted as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councilman Sanchez. Councilwoman Surgeon, since you weren't here earlier, I'll defer.
I just wanted to see if we had gotten a copy of the map. Did you, new map was redone, Amy? Not sure.
Yes, I apologize. I did say at the beginning of the meeting that I would share that. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let me make you the host. Or can you do it without me doing that?
I think so, yeah. Let's see. Can everyone see this on my screen?
The top half, we see,
Okay, I'm gonna stay zoomed in just because it's a lot. So went through paying attention to some of the feedback that I received about specific streets, but then kind of thinking about that as well with regard to a few of the other locations that were proposed on here. So I'll just go top to bottom and just kind of highlight what the changes are. There was a small section of area in front of Cronin Park that was proposed just outside of this buffer. It's pretty small, and I think would have pushed the carts, just kind of thinking about it, on the ground, pushed the carts onto the residential side of the street. So I moved that up towards this empty lot that's owned by the city just past Cronin Park. I took Tower Avenue off. There's not enough shoulder on Tower for trucks to be able to park, and it's pretty high speed. So I took that off entirely. I took off the stretch of North Main Street for the same reason, but added fish fry so that there's something kind of in the general vicinity that is not on such a busy strip. Took off Reverend Moody again onto Weston for similar reasons, but left the side roads and less busy roads in the North Meadows. Let's see. Moved. There was again a little strip on Walnut that again, just due to the busyness and the configuration of the road, moved it to the kind of dead end area of Homestead Circle. There are several car dealerships there, and those trucks, if they were to park, would be kind of protected by the buffer that's there and not in the way of traffic. Let's see. And took off Airport Road as per the request of during the public meeting. I also took off Locust because there are, I don't think there's space there on their bike lanes on Locust, and if food trucks were to park, they'd be obstructing that. So I left Ledyard because it's a wider road with more space. And then the last thing I would note is I took off the second half of Bartholomew past Hamilton because the road is much narrower there as well.
thank you.
Just question, Amy, so does that interfere with the, that's Parkville up there, with the, that food court area up there? By Bartholomew area?
That section of Park Street is just outside of that parcel.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, through you.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
Amy, again, great job. Do you have kind of a list of this, not visually, but, written?
I don't, but I can definitely put it together.
Only because it would be great to be able to see it that way. Do you know what I mean? I know it's just more work, but sometimes when you're looking at this, I would love to be able to see it written out, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
I would piggybacking on you, Councilwoman Rossetti, I would imagine that eventually that would probably be part of the process anyway for the marketing and outreach for, okay. So, Amy, I have another question. When did we receive the, I was busy today, but when did we receive these changes?
The changes to the ordinance I sent just this morning, probably around like 11:45 or something like that. The map I did not email to you, and it was not ready prior to close of business, so my apologies.
No problem. I mean, like I said, the turnaround time, I mean, I'm really impressed with the amount of things that you changed in such a short period of time. It's really impressive. And kudos to you and the team for doing this. With the voting members here, what I also want to say is because I have not been able, and not just myself, I think
Either.
the entire team has not been able to really digest this. And we want to make sure that, although you've included a lot of what we stated, to be able to really concretely view this and look at certain items, what I would request is if we could get some more time on that. But Mr. Osborne, and I think someone just joined us. I'm sorry, I can't see. Who just joined us? Is that?
It's I, Charles.
Director Matthews. How are you, sir?
Fine. How are you?
All right, good to see you, sir. DeMar, Court Counsel, I have a question. Are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so the question I have is that, there is time associated with this. Is it okay if myself and council colleagues are able to digest this and then give recommendations back to Mrs. Chambers and Director Matthews without having another special meeting? Or would we, in terms of voting in favor of this, need to have another meeting to vote in favor of this? And then the second question, if that is the latter, then how quickly can we do that?
Well, I would say as long as there's nothing substantively changed, it wouldn't require another meeting. I believe that Ms. Chambers has incorporated changes that you've already discussed and we've already met on. To the extent that there's nothing substantively changes, I don't believe another meeting will be required.
Okay. So with that being said, Mr. Osborne, in terms of practical sense, could we hypothetically postpone today, right? Be able to digest this, and then we could kick it back prior to the next council meeting and kick it out of committee prior to the next council meeting on May 10th.
I'm trying to understand what exactly you're saying, sir.
Okay. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that we got two things. We got two balls in the air. The first ball in the air is that the city is wanting and desirous of getting this done as soon as possible. But the other important thing is that we as council need time to digest this, right? Like we just received this today. We're just looking at the map now. Some of us are more visual. Some of us like written. We need time to really dive into this. Not saying that there's going to be.
Mr. Chair, if I could suggest, the next meeting of this committee, the regularly scheduled meeting, is May 3rd.
Correct.
So why don't we just postpone tonight to May 3rd, and on May 3rd, we can act favorably, unfavorably, and send it to council for May 10th. I think that'll all work.
Sure, but the issue is, Councilman Gale, is that we also have budget meetings that night.
Yeah.
Not on May 3rd, I don't think.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
We started on Tuesday.
We start Monday, May 3rd at 5:30.
Oh.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilwoman Surgeon.
Okay, so if everything that you guys have talked, I apologize, sir, for running late for this meeting at another one. But if you guys are pretty much okay with 90% of the changes so far, and you just want you just have time, why not at the next council meeting on Monday, you can vote it out of committee, I'm not voted out of committee, as a chairperson, you can bring it to the floor.
Yeah,
if you're happy with it.
Yeah, I guess, Councilwoman Surgeon, I'm fine with that. I'm just looking for suggestions from procedurally, what's the best way to approach this to, number one, number one being, adhering to the timeline and the needing of this to be done sooner than later. And number two, affording the committee members, including our council colleagues, the ability to chew on this document, at least for a little bit of time, right? Without making decisions in haste. So that's what I'm looking for. Councilman Sanchez?
Yes, may I also suggest that, to your point, Councilman, and through you, Chair, that once we receive this information, that we can digest it, and then maybe we can all the members that can vote can send you an email or a text letting you know that we, like myself, I approve of it and I will vote yes. If you get the majority votes, then as the chair, you can discharge it prior to the council meeting so that it can be put on a consent calendar.
So
They discharge it at the committee meeting, at the council meeting, you mean?
Correct.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong date. So you're talking about as soon as April 26th, Councilman Sanchez?
Well, now that you're saying it's April 26th, yes.
Next Monday, we have a council meeting.
Correct.
Right.
Right. And same idea, what Councilman Sanchez is saying is that, if you have time to, as he said, go through it, digest it, and as chair, discharge it at the council meeting so it can be voted upon. If everything is okay on Monday, the 20th.
We can walk it on. Ms. Chambers, one more question for you. You said.
By the way, Chair, I have some more questions,
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Councilman Gale. But let me just ask this quick question. Ms. Chambers, you said you had to bring it back to the mayor's office. Did I hear that correctly? And get the mayor to sign off?
Yes, so we reviewed the changes with Corporation Council, but we've not had the opportunity to review the additional changes with the mayor's office. Charles, I don't know if you want to chime in at all about that, but I did let the council members know that we needed to do that, so.
Because Director Matthews, just real quick, because here's my fear, right? Let's say, for example, it's not fear, but here's what my concern is that, let's say, for example, we chew on the document as early as Friday, we come back, we say, okay, we good. And then the mayor's office may have some tweaks, right? And then that'll be a change for Monday, and then there'll be more changes. And I think one of the concerns that we always have in council is having to approve things last minute without reviewing things. And as a committee chair, I want to afford all of my council colleagues the ability to feel comfortable with what the recommendations are.
Well, it would seem, I understand your point. It would seem that between now, hopefully, and the council meeting, the mayor can certainly review it. If he has some tweaks, those tweaks can be presented at the council meeting along with other council members who may have some tweaks or some amendments. And I assume you can make those amendments right from the council floor. But at least that's where we used to do it. But I'm not sure that's still the process.
Yeah, we can, Director Matthews. I think the only thing that, and let me just say that this is a personal struggle of mine, is the word substantive. I can't even say it. And to me, there's some subjectivity in that wording. And so, that's the only thing, is that what is that line of demarcation that merits substantive or not? But with that being said, Councilman Gale? Oh, I'm sorry, Director, but.
If I may, if in fact there's a consensus that there are substantial amendments, well, then in that case, you probably can't move it forward if it's substantial. But if the council's consensus is that the modifications are minor, that's a different story. But that can be made by the council on the day off the council meeting.
Thank you very much, Director. Okay, Councilman Gale?
Sorry, I'll just say that'd be my understanding as well as Mr. Charles.
Councilman Gale?
Yeah, a couple of questions for Amy, and one more suggestion for you. You could have a special meeting on April 29th, which is a Thursday. I don't think we have anything else going on that night. And then it could be teed up for May 10th. But Ms. Chambers, I just want to, the regulation of food trucks are food trucks in the private way. I'm sorry, are food trucks in the public right of way. This ordinance is not going to regulate the conduct of a food truck that's on private property, is it?
It is not, Councilman. Those would be governed by the zoning regulations, and zoning does permit food trucks in specific zones on private lots with consent from the property owner. And the zoning regulations do, in line with what's written in the proposed ordinance, limit the food trucks on those private properties to operate only until 9 p.m. And with the exception of food trucks associated with craftsman industrial uses, which in the zoning regs are basically breweries and things like that. So, for example, limited to those craftsman industrial uses or special events. So something like No Good Market, which I know was mentioned in the public hearing, would not be impacted by this. They are an event, they're associated with a brewery, they would be able to, with that permit, operate until such time that they, plan for their event to go. In addition, there's regularly at that brewery a food truck that's there. That food truck is operating in association with that brewery. They would be able to operate to a later hour. But a food truck kind of operating standalone or not associated with a brewery or distillery, something like that, would be limited on private property to that 9 p.m. timeframe.
And so under this new ordinance, we couldn't establish a food truck park like New Haven has that would operate past 9 p.m.
Under the ordinance, no, but we could do so under the zoning regulations. Because the food truck park would be on property governed by zoning, unless it's in like no, it would be on property governed by zoning.
So I do have a couple of concerns about the time here. I raised them before and I will raise them again. I really think that 9 o'clock it's puritanical. I doubt there's many other cities in the country that close down their food trucks at 9 p.m. And for Hartford to do so just seems to be going backwards and not forwards. And so I'm concerned. I really would like to see you build in a little discretion here. I don't have a problem with 9 p.m. on many of the districts, but I don't know why we don't allow midnight 1, 2 in the industrial districts, or the ability to create a food truck park that could do something similar. So it's a concern for me. I would like to see some flexibility built in. I'm not looking to put a food truck at 1 p.m. In front of some residences, but you've already eliminated all the residences with the map. You don't have any, you're not allowing any food trucks on any of the arteries, it seems. So I'm not clear why we're not allowing some vending to go later. And Councilman LeBron, you could speak to this because you had a push cart. Why are we limiting the push carts to midnight? Don't these hot dog guys make a boatload of money at 1 o'clock when the bars get out? And isn't that a good thing?
That's how I pay my rent.
Well, so I'm not opposed to the push carts being, having some, some flexibility in particular locations. But anyway,
So with that being,
that's a concern. That's a concern for me.
Yeah. So we have another meeting at 6, and I want to be mindful of time. So with that being said, for my council colleagues, if you guys can circle back with me, we can have conversations offline. Can I get a motion from someone? Oh, I'll throw out the motion first.
Motion to postpone this to the next, to whatever meeting you schedule this at.
Yes, I second that motion to postpone, for let the record show. Any for discussion? Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All right, so let the record show our conversation that we had earlier, and that I'm saying this to my staff who's putting the meeting notes together. Let the record show that we will be reviewing, council committee and council colleagues will be reviewing this document and try to expedite as soon as possible, as early as the April 26th. I'm sorry, Ms. Chambers, your eyes went up. I meant the April 26th meeting with the potentiality of approving at that date. All right. With that being said, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. See you on the other side. It's a 6 o'clock meeting. You're all welcome to join.
Thank you.
All right.